Hi guys, tonight we're exploring a terrifying scenario. What if the sun simply failed to rise one morning? What if darkness fell and never lifted, leaving half the planet in eternal night while the other half remained in perpetual day? If you enjoy these apocalyptic sleep stories that explore the fragility of our planet, hit that like button and subscribe for more, and drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. I appreciate connecting with listeners across every corner of the world. All right, let's begin. The first thing you notice when the sun fails to rise is the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of dawn, but something deeper, more unsettling. Birds that should be greeting the morning with their chorus remain huddled in their roosts. The automatic streetlights that dimmed at their programmed hour flicker back to life as sensors detect the unnatural darkness. In cities across the eastern seaboard of the United States, where it should be 6:30 in the morning on what appeared to be an ordinary Tuesday, 23 million people begin to realize that something has gone catastrophically wrong. The Earth continues its rotation at its steady pace of 1,040 miles per hour at the equator, but the sun that has risen faithfully for 4.6 billion years simply isn't there. Not hidden behind clouds, not obscured by some atmospheric phenomenon, but absent entirely from the sky where it should appear as a disk 32 arc-minutes wide, blazing at 5,778 degrees Kelvin. The star that provides 1.4 kilowatts of energy per square meter to our planet's surface has vanished, leaving behind only the cold vacuum of space and the distant, inadequate light of stars that suddenly seem impossibly far away. Within the first hour, confusion ripples across the globe in waves. Astronomical observatories from Mauna Kea to the Atacama Desert confirm what millions are witnessing with their own eyes. Radio telescopes detect no solar radiation at the expected wavelengths. The solar wind, that constant stream of charged particles flowing outward at speeds between 200 and 800 kilometers per second, has ceased entirely. Satellites in orbit, many of which depend on solar panels generating between 1 and 15 kilowatts of power, begin switching to backup battery systems that were never designed to operate indefinitely. The immediate panic is perhaps predictable, but the scale is unprecedented. In New York City, the subway system that carries 5.5 million passengers daily grinds to a halt as commuters flood underground stations, seeking information that no one can provide. Traffic management systems fail as 8.4 million vehicles attempt to navigate streets under emergency lighting. The city's electrical grid, which normally handles a peak load of 13,000 megawatts, experiences cascading failures as demand spikes by 40% within 2 hours. Emergency services receive over 2 million calls, overwhelming communication networks designed to handle peak loads of only 300,000 simultaneous connections. But the psychological impact extends far beyond simple infrastructure strain. Throughout recorded history, the sun has been humanity's most reliable constant. Ancient civilizations built entire cosmologies around its daily journey across the sky. The Egyptians worshipped Ra, the Greeks honored Helios, and countless cultures mark time itself by solar cycles. Now, in an age when we understand the sun as a middle-aged G-type main sequence star containing 99.86% of our solar system's mass, its absence strikes at something primal in human consciousness. Mental health hotlines report call volumes increasing by 600% within the first 4 hours, with operators struggling to address fears that range from rational concerns about crop failure to apocalyptic visions of divine judgment. The scientific community mobilizes with unprecedented speed. The Goddard Space Flight Center activates emergency protocols designed for solar observation missions. The Parker Solar Probe, which had been travelling at speeds of up to 430,000 miles per hour in its elliptical orbit, suddenly finds itself tracking through empty space where the Sun's corona should extend to temperatures of 2 million degrees Celsius. Deep space monitoring stations detect that Jupiter's Galilean moons, which should be experiencing gravitational forces of approximately 628 trillion newtons from the Sun, are beginning to drift from their predicted orbits. The absence of solar gravity creates immediate consequences throughout the solar system. Earth, travelling at its orbital velocity of 67,000 miles per hour, continues along its trajectory, but now follows a straight line into interstellar space rather than its familiar elliptical path. The Moon, held in its orbit by Earth's gravity of approximately 2.0 times 10 to the 20th power newtons, remains bound to our planet, but the tidal forces that normally raise ocean levels by an average of 3 feet twice daily begin to shift as solar tidal effects vanish entirely. Within 12 hours, the first measurable temperature drops become apparent. The Earth's atmosphere, which normally maintains an average global temperature of 59 degrees Fahrenheit, through the greenhouse effect begins to cool as the 173,000 terawatts of solar energy that constantly bath our planet cease entirely. Weather stations record temperature decreases of 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit in the first day, with more dramatic cooling occurring in desert regions, where the thermal mass of surrounding terrain provides less buffering against heat loss. Agricultural regions face immediate crisis. The world's crop production, which feeds 7.8 billion people and generates approximately $4 trillion in annual global value, depends entirely on photosynthesis. Corn crops across the American Midwest, which produce 354 million metric tons annually, begin showing stress within 24 hours as chlorophyll production halts. Wheat fields spanning over 218 million hectares globally face similar devastation. Rice paddies in Southeast Asia, supporting the dietary needs of 3.5 billion people, experience immediate growth cessation in varieties that require 12 to 16 hours of daily sunlight. The Amazon rainforest, containing approximately 10% of the world's biodiversity across 5.5 million square kilometers, begins what ecologists quickly recognize as an unprecedented collapse. Trees that normally process 48 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare annually through photosynthesis not only cease this vital function, but begin releasing stored carbon as cellular respiration continues in darkness. The 65 billion tons of carbon stored in Amazon biomass face gradual release into an atmosphere that will soon struggle to maintain temperatures necessary for most life forms. Ocean ecosystems experience equally dramatic disruption. Phytoplankton, microscopic organisms that produce 70% of Earth's oxygen and form the foundation of marine food webs, require sunlight for photosynthesis. The 46 billion tons of phytoplankton distributed throughout the world's oceans begin dying within days, triggering a cascade of ecological collapse. Commercial fisheries that provide protein for over 3 billion people and generate $240 billion annually face complete devastation as food chains collapse from the bottom up. Blue whales, the planet's largest animals at lengths up to 100 feet and weights reaching 200 tons, find their primary food source of krill disappearing as the tiny crustaceans lose their phytoplankton sustenance. Energy infrastructure worldwide struggles to adapt to the new reality. Solar power installations, which generate over 760 gigawatts of electricity globally, become entirely useless. Nations like Germany, which derive 20% of their electricity from solar sources, experience immediate grid instability. Desert solar farms spanning thousands of square kilometers in places like the Mojave Desert and the Sahara, representing investments of hundreds of billions of dollars, become monuments to humanity's former relationship with its star. Nuclear power plants, generating approximately 2,700 terawatts per year globally, become humanity's most reliable energy source in the new dark world. The 433 reactors operating worldwide suddenly represent critical infrastructure for species survival. Countries with high nuclear capacity, including France with its 56 reactors generating 70% of national electricity, find themselves in advantageous positions for maintaining civilization's basic functions. Hydroelectric dams continue operation initially, but as water cycles disrupted by absent solar evaporation begin affecting river flows, even these sources face long-term challenges. Food storage and distribution systems reveal their dependence on assumptions of normal solar cycles. Global food reserves, typically calculated to last between 74 and 81 days under normal consumption patterns, take on existential importance. The United States maintains strategic grain reserves of approximately 31 million metric tons, while China holds similar quantities of rice and wheat. These stockpiles, originally designed to buffer against regional crop failures or trade disruptions, must now sustain populations potentially for years as agricultural production ceases entirely. Greenhouse agriculture emerges as humanity's primary hope for continued food production. The Netherlands, with its advanced greenhouse technology spanning over 10,000 hectares, becomes a model for survival agriculture. These controlled environments, heated by natural gas and illuminated by LED systems consuming approximately 250 watts per square meter, can theoretically maintain crop production indefinitely given adequate energy supplies. However, scaling such operations to feed global populations requires energy investments that strain existing infrastructure to breaking points. Urban areas face unique challenges as heat island effects that normally moderate temperatures through solar absorption become liabilities in the cooling world. Cities like Phoenix, Arizona, where summer temperatures regularly exceed 115 degrees Fahrenheit, experience rapid cooling as concrete and asphalt that stored solar energy during daylight hours radiate their heat into the darkened sky. The 2 million residents of the Phoenix metropolitan area face heating costs that increase exponentially as natural gas consumption rises from typical winter levels of 150 therms per month to over 400 therms as temperatures continue falling. Transportation systems designed around predictable weather patterns struggle with new realities. Commercial aviation, which carries over 4 billion passengers annually on 46 million flights, faces unprecedented challenges as jet streams and atmospheric patterns shift without solar heating driving weather systems. The 17,000 aircraft in global commercial service encounter navigation difficulties as GPS satellites, many powered by solar panels generating 1 to 2 kilowatts each, begin failing as battery reserves deplete. Maritime shipping, responsible for transporting 90% of global trade worth approximately $14 trillion annually, confronts ocean conditions unlike anything in recorded history. The 62,000 merchant vessels navigating the world's seas encounter increasingly unpredictable weather as normal pressure systems destabilize. Container ships carrying 24,000 standard containers find their routes affected by changing currents as thermal circulation patterns collapse without solar heating driving ocean movements. The psychological toll on humanity intensifies as days pass without sunrise. Seasonal affective disorder, normally affecting 10 million Americans during winter months, becomes a global pandemic of depression and anxiety. Light therapy clinics report 1,000-fold increases in demand for bright light boxes producing 10,000 lux to simulate sunlight exposure. Vitamin D deficiency, typically managed through 15 minutes of daily sun exposure, becomes universal as the UV radiation necessary for synthesis disappears entirely. religious communities worldwide struggle to interpret the unprecedented event. Vatican astronomers, operating the Vatican Observatory with its advanced telescope systems, join scientific efforts to understand the phenomenon while theological scholars debate implications of a sunless world. Islamic communities face challenges in determining prayer times traditionally calculated by solar position, while Hindu temples dedicated to Surya, the sun god, become centers of desperate prayer and ritual. Indigenous communities whose spiritual practices center on solar cycles experience profound cultural disruption as traditional ceremonies become impossible to perform according to ancient calendars. Financial markets collapse within the first week as the magnitude of economic disruption becomes apparent. Global stock markets lose over 60% of their combined $40 trillion value as investors realize that normal economic activity cannot continue without solar energy. Agricultural commodity futures for crops like soybeans, trading at over $40 billion annually, become worthless as production ceases entirely. Energy sector stocks experience wild volatility as coal and natural gas companies see demand spike while renewable energy firms face complete obsolescence. Insurance companies face claims that exceed their collective reserves of approximately $6 trillion globally. Property damage from failing infrastructure, crop losses totaling hundreds of billions of dollars, and business interruption claims create an industry-wide insolvency crisis. Lloyd's of London, with its 300-year history of covering unusual risks, encounters claims scenarios that no actuarial model ever contemplated. Governments implement emergency measures that fundamentally alter social contracts between states and citizens. The United States invokes the Defense Production Act to redirect manufacturing capacity toward emergency heating systems and artificial lighting. Europe activates Article 4 of the NATO Treaty, treating the solar disappearance as a threat requiring collective defense against civilizational collapse. China's centralized planning systems mobilize industrial capacity toward massive greenhouse construction projects designed to maintain food security for 1.4 billion people. Refugee movements begin within the first month as populations in colder climates seek survival in regions with better heating infrastructure or remaining food supplies. The Arctic, normally home to 4 million people adapted to extreme cold, becomes uninhabitable as temperatures drop below -40 degrees Fahrenheit without solar warming. Canada's Northern Territories, spanning 3.9 million square kilometres, experience complete population evacuation as residents move south toward more temperate regions with better energy infrastructure. Scientific research into the sun's disappearance reveals disturbing possibilities. Theoretical physicists propose scenarios ranging from stellar collapse to artificial intervention by advanced civilizations. The sun's mass of approximately 2 × 10 to the 30th power kilograms couldn't simply vanish without violating fundamental conservation laws, suggesting either the displacement of the star to another location or its conversion to forms of matter or energy undetectable by current instruments. Some researchers explore darker possibilities, including intervention by extraterrestrial intelligences possessing technology capable of manipulating stellar objects. The Fermi paradox, which questions why no signs of advanced alien civilizations have been detected despite the high probability of their existence, takes on ominous implications if the sun's disappearance represents first contact through an act of cosmic engineering. Radio telescopes detect no artificial signals, but civilizations capable of moving stars might communicate through methods beyond human comprehension. Alternative theories suggest quantum mechanical explanations involving multidimensional physics or temporal anomalies. The possibility that Earth has been displaced into a parallel universe where the sun never existed challenges fundamental assumptions about reality itself. Quantum physicists calculate probability amplitudes for such scenarios, but the mathematics describe events so improbable that their occurrence might indicate systematic manipulation of cosmic constants by unknown forces. Underground facilities become humanity's lifelines as surface temperatures continue dropping. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, containing over 1 million seed varieties in permafrost at -18 degrees Celsius, represents genetic insurance for future agriculture if solar conditions ever return. Deep underground cities in places like Montreal's Roseau network, spanning 33 kilometers of tunnels connecting buildings and metro stations, demonstrate models for subterranean survival as surface habitability declines. Military installations designed for nuclear warfare provide blueprints for long-term survival in hostile environments. NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain facility, built to withstand nuclear attack and sustain operations for extended periods, becomes a template for civilian survival complexes. The facility's ability to maintain life support for 1,500 personnel using diesel generators and stored supplies offers proof of concept for larger underground communities. Mining operations worldwide take on new significance as sources of geothermal energy and protected environments. Coal mines extending thousands of feet below surface maintain relatively stable temperatures through geothermal heating from Earth's core. These vast underground networks, previously focused on extracting fossil fuels, become potential habitats for human communities seeking escape from the frozen surface world. Geothermal energy sources experience unprecedented development as humanity seeks alternatives to solar power. Iceland's geothermal plants, generating over 700 megawatts from volcanic activity, become models for global expansion of Earth-heated power generation. The Ring of Fire around the Pacific Ocean offers potential sites for geothermal development, though the engineering challenges of rapidly constructing such facilities under emergency conditions strain available resources and expertise. Ocean thermal energy conversion systems, normally considered marginal technologies, gain critical importance as temperature differentials between deep and surface waters become humanity's few remaining renewable energy sources. The Gulf Stream, carrying 150 million cubic meters of water per second, with temperature differentials of up to 20 degrees Celsius, represents a massive energy source if properly harnessed through floating power platforms. Biomass energy from stored organic matter becomes crucial for bridging energy gaps. Global wood reserves, typically used for construction and paper production, redirect toward heating and electricity generation. Forest biomass, containing approximately 550 billion tons of carbon worldwide, represents stored solar energy from previous years that can sustain communities temporarily while longer-term solutions develop. Fusion power research receives unlimited funding and priority as humanity potential salvation. The International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Project, designed to demonstrate fusion power generation at 500 megawatts, accelerates development timelines from decades to years. Private fusion companies like Commonwealth Fusion Systems and TAE Technologies receive government contracts worth hundreds of billions of dollars to develop commercial fusion power capable of replacing lost solar energy. Vertical farming operations expand rapidly as humanity's primary method for food production. Companies like Aero Farms and Plenty, operating facilities that produce yields equivalent to 400 times traditional agriculture per square foot, receive massive investments to scale operations globally. These systems, requiring approximately 36 kilowatt-hours per kilogram of produce, demand enormous energy inputs, but represent the only viable path for feeding populations without solar-powered photosynthesis. Medical systems confront unprecedented challenges as vitamin D deficiency becomes universal and depression reaches pandemic levels. pharmaceutical companies accelerate production of vitamin D supplements, typically consumed by 1 billion people annually, to meet universal demand. Antidepressant medications see demand increase by over 1,000%, as seasonal affective disorder affects entire populations rather than seasonal minorities. Cultural preservation efforts intensify as communities realize that traditional ways of life tied to solar cycles may never return. Museums and cultural institutions work frantically to document customs, ceremonies, and knowledge systems developed around solar observations. Agricultural knowledge accumulated over 10,000 years of farming becomes historical artifact rather than practical wisdom, as photosynthesis-based cultivation ends permanently. Children born into the sunless world represent humanity's first generation with no direct experience of solar illumination. Educational systems adapt curricula to explain concepts like seasons, weather patterns, and ecological cycles that no longer exist in students' lived experience. This psychological development of children who never experience natural daylight becomes an unprecedented challenge for child psychologists and educators worldwide. Artistic and literary communities respond to the unprecedented reality through works that attempt to capture the magnitude of change. Writers struggle to describe the absence of humanity's most fundamental reference point, while visual artists explore the aesthetics of permanent artificial illumination. Musicians compose pieces reflecting the silence of birds that no longer sing dawn choruses, and the subtle acoustic changes in a world without solar-heated air currents. Religious and spiritual movements emerge around the solar disappearance, with some groups interpreting the event as divine judgment, while others see it as a test of human adaptability and cooperation. New theological frameworks develop to address questions about cosmic purpose and humanity's place in a universe where its home star has vanished. Some communities embrace the darkness as an opportunity for inner reflection and spiritual growth, while others organize massive prayer campaigns seeking the sun's return. International cooperation reaches levels unprecedented in human history, as national boundaries become meaningless in the face of species-level extinction threat. The United Nations establishes emergency protocols for resource sharing and population distribution. Traditional geopolitical rivalries between nations like the United States and China give way to collaborative efforts as leaders recognize that national sovereignty means nothing if civilization collapses entirely. Scientific collaboration accelerates beyond normal peer review processes as researchers share data and theories in real-time global networks. The normal competitive nature of academic research transforms into cooperative efforts as the urgency of finding solutions overrides concerns about intellectual property or publication priority. Universities worldwide convert their facilities into research centers focused exclusively on survival technologies and alternative energy sources. Space agencies worldwide consolidate their efforts into a unified program aimed at understanding what happened to the Sun and whether the phenomenon might reverse. The International Space Station, normally occupied by 6 to 7 astronauts conducting various research projects, becomes humanity's primary observatory for studying the sunless solar system. Astronauts report psychological challenges of looking toward where Earth's star should blaze but finding only empty space filled with distant galaxies. Long-term survival planning assumes the sun will never return, forcing humanity to reimagine civilization built around artificial energy sources and controlled environments. Urban planners design underground cities capable of sustaining millions of people, using nuclear power and hydroponic agriculture. These massive engineering projects require international cooperation on scales that dwarf previous human undertakings like the International Space Station or Large Hadron Collider. The transformation of human society accelerates as traditional economic systems prove inadequate for managing resources in a survival situation. Market-based allocation of food, energy, and shelter gives way to centralized distribution systems designed to maximize population survival rather than profit generation. Private property concepts adapt to realities where hoarding essential resources threatens community survival. Technological innovation focuses exclusively on life support systems as luxury goods and entertainment industries redirect their resources toward survival technologies. Smartphone manufacturers retool production lines to create LED growing lights for hydroponic systems. Automotive plants shift from vehicle production to manufacturing heating systems and power generation equipment. The entertainment industry transforms into educational content creation, teaching survival skills and maintaining morale in underground communities. As months pass without sunrise, humanity begins adapting to the permanent night in ways both practical and profound. Children learn to navigate by artificial light, never experiencing the natural rhythm of day and night that guided human development for millions of years. Adults develop new sleep patterns, divorced from circadian rhythms evolved around solar cycles. The absence of natural light sources creates a strange equality, as wealthy and poor alike live under the same artificial illumination systems. Archaeological sites worldwide become repositories of knowledge about humanity's solar relationship. Ancient sundials and solar calendars transform from historical curiosities into poignant reminders of humanity's former cosmic context. Stonehenge and other monuments aligned with solar phenomena become pilgrimage destinations where people gather to remember the star that once defined human existence. The question of whether the sun might return haunts every survival plan and long-term strategy. Without understanding how or why the star disappeared, predicting its potential reappearance becomes impossible. Some communities organize their entire survival strategies around the assumption of eventual solar return, maintaining seed banks and agricultural knowledge for future use. Others plan for permanent adaptation to a sunless existence, developing technologies and social systems designed for indefinite operation without solar energy. Weather patterns continue evolving without solar heating driving atmospheric circulation. The complex systems of high and low pressure areas, jet streams, and seasonal temperature variations gradually disappear as the atmosphere reaches thermal equilibrium with the cooling Earth. Hurricane seasons become obsolete concepts as the temperature differentials necessary for storm formation cease to exist. The science of meteorology transforms from predicting weather patterns to managing artificial atmospheric conditions in enclosed habitats. Ocean currents that distributed heat around the globe begin slowing as thermal circulation stops. The Gulf Stream, which moderates temperatures across Western Europe, gradually weakens as the temperature differential between equatorial and polar waters disappears. This disruption affects marine ecosystems worldwide as species adapted to specific temperature ranges face environments beyond their survival parameters. Deep ocean temperatures, normally maintained around 4 degrees Celsius, begin dropping toward freezing as surface cooling penetrates deeper waters. The absence of seasons affects human psychology in ways researchers struggle to understand. Cultures built around seasonal celebrations, agricultural cycles, and temporal rhythms tied to solar position must reinvent their relationship with time itself. Calendar systems based on solar years become arbitrary constructs as humanity adopts purely mechanical time measurement, divorced from astronomical phenomena. Language itself begins adapting to sunless reality as words associated with daylight, sunshine, and solar phenomena gradually lose relevance in daily speech. Children growing up in artificial light develop vocabulary centered on electric illumination and heating systems rather than natural light descriptions. The metaphorical use of solar imagery in literature and speech becomes historical reference rather than lived experience, creating a linguistic divide between pre-solar disappearance and post-solar disappearance generations. Medical research reveals unexpected health consequences of permanent artificial illumination, as human bodies struggle to maintain biological rhythms evolved over millions of years of solar exposure. Circadian rhythm disorders become universal rather than exceptional medical conditions. Sleep specialists work frantically to develop artificial light therapies that can substitute for natural sunlight in regulating hormone production and maintaining physical health. The medical understanding of seasonal depression expands to encompass entire populations rather than seasonal minorities. As humanity adapts to its sunless existence, the event forces a fundamental reassessment of human priorities and values. The disappearance of Earth's star strips away many assumptions about progress, growth, and technological advancement, revealing the fragility of civilization built around abundant energy sources. Yet within this darkness, human ingenuity and cooperation emerge as powerful forces for survival and adaptation. The night that never ends becomes not just a challenge to overcome, but a transformation that reveals the depths of human resilience and the possibilities for rebuilding civilization around entirely new foundations. Whether the sun will ever return remains an unanswerable question, but humanity's response to its absence writes a new chapter in the story of what it means to be human in a vast and mysterious universe.